Kia ora tātou. At Women's Ministries, one of the things I have the privilege of doing is promoting resources that might help you. And every month we give away a book or a resource, usually a book. This month it happens to be a book. It's this one. It's called The Courage of Women, and it's by Rob Harley, who happens to be sitting beside me right now. We're at his house. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure.
And this is a cool book. I read it over the January holidays that have just been, and it was very hard to put down. In fact, I did not get much housework or any of the stuff done that I was supposed to do. I did do it over 2 days because I did have to stop and sleep. But it's a really compelling story. It's engaging. It made me cry, but it's really real, and that's what I really liked about it. And so we're really honoured to have Rob talk to us about this book. If you don't know Rob, he's had, I think it's over 50 years in journalism and television and radio and print, and this is his 7th book, and he was telling me there's an 8th one coming as well. So it's really lovely to be able to talk to you about this. So could we start with, could you just tell me about the cover? I love this cover. There's something very raw about this cover which grabs me.
The graphic artist that did it is very imaginative, and if you get the book and look at some of the drawings she's done, she's very imaginative. She takes pictures of the she will take a drawing of one of the subjects in the story and mix it in with a map, a location of where the story actually takes place. Yeah. And the brief she had was design a woman with a strong face who looks like she's been through something but is firm and resolute. That was what we did. Yep.
The face tells a story. It absolutely does. I say a picture tells, 1,000 words. So, could you tell us a little bit about the story as to how you ended up writing this book to start with?
Well, it had its birth in a bit of a life experience crisis. I've suffered, as some creatives do, over the years with pretty dodgy mental health. Yeah. Back in my TVNZ days, I recognised, particularly coming back from some overseas assignments, which had been a bit gruelling, to war zones and other places, that I was a bit fragile. Yeah. Got some counselling, got some help. Then the middle part is a very long story, but I ended up in a psychiatric ward under the Mental Health Act over Christmas 2023 to 2024. I was sectioned there, and I had 3 weeks in the company of some surprisingly eminent people, and I was looked after by 2 very bright nurses, two very bright physicians, a psychiatrist from Poland and a psychologist from Serbia. Mm-hmm. And it just occurred to me as they were very incisively taking my head apart that, gee whiz, a lot of the people in my journalism career that have actually heavily influenced me and helped me by the stories that I've been privileged enough to tell about them have been women. And I thought, some of them I've written up in other books, previous books, but I realised I had about 13 left over. I started, while I was in the hospital, I started writing madly, thinking I want to write a book about courageous women. A couple of the stories, one of them, the woman in the end said, "Nah, it's a good story." They're all based on documentaries, mostly, that I've done. And she said, "No, I want to write it myself." And I said, "Great." And another one said, "No, we did the documentary. I don't want to see it in print." So there were a couple of rejection slips, right. But I ended up with 11 and compiled them together, finished off with an epilogue paying tribute to my beautiful wife. And there it is, The Courage of Women.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that out of a challenging situation that you were in yourself, that something good came out of that. And it seems to me, as I've read the book, that's kind of the story, is that life is a roller coaster. It goes up and down, and some very ordinary people can be confronted with some challenges, but when they push through and persevere, often over the really long time, good can come out of it, and they can make a difference in the end. And I guess that's the story that you're telling me, also with your own personal story. And so you got some professional help, but is there anything else that I was going to say that has got you through, but I mean, you might not be through because it's an ongoing story, isn't it? And I know you've had the mental health stuff, but there was some physical health stuff as well. How are you doing, and how do you keep going? persevere?
Physical health's fine. I had a liver transplant just on 9 years ago. That went exceptionally well. I'm in robust health. I'm not fit enough, but physically in pretty good shape.
Cool. Yeah. And with the mental health stuff, the things you've had to put in place, or like, does your faith have a part in keeping you going?
It's been quite a saga. I mean, it sort of began with the suicide of my beautiful business partner in 2009. Okay. She and I had worked together on much of the material, the faith-based material we did. We parted company. We tried to get back together again. And in the end, she took her own life. Wow. I was actually at a Salvation Army conference in Sydney, half a day into a 3-day course teaching communications, when I got the news that our lovely Linda had ended her life. Yeah. And that just spun me out. Yeah. I mean, I'd had depression for a number of years, not well diagnosed, but I spiraled at that point. I sought refuge in alcohol. Yeah. Destroyed my liver, needed a transplant. After the transplant, had about another 4 or 5 years of really bad mental health, and I'm still in weekly therapy. You know, as someone once said, you know, we're all just beggars showing the other beggars where to find the food. Yeah.
Thank you for being so honest. It's an ongoing journey. So let's talk about this book. I love the title, The Courage of Women, not Women of Courage, which suggests to me that maybe the courage of women is different to the courage of men. Is that something that was behind your thinking in the title?
Yeah, and right from the beginning, and then at the end, I quote the words of the song by Alice Cooper, a male, his song "Only Women Bleed." Yeah, and he peels back the layers of the ways in which women live, cope, suffer, recover. Yep. And it occurred to me, the more I listened to that song and the more I've known women, including women in my own family, I've realised, you know, women are wired differently to men. And as I said in one of the stories, you know, about 2 women that I wrote about who were both trying to make sure that their second children would not have a dreadful inherited disease. Yeah, their husbands were involved, but they were the ones in the end who had to make the decision. Do I try to conceive this child? Do I carry this child? Will this child be well? How will I raise this child? You know, in the end, the woman is at the very centre of the decision making and the pain and the recovery, if necessary. Yes,
indeed. So it can be different for women, and there can be an incredible amount of resilience that women show in these situations, hence the second part of the title of the book.
Journey to the Crossroads.
Resilience.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've been a great reader over the years, and I used to read a lot of John Pilger, who's an Australian investigative journalist, and he talked about his grandfather or his father coming back from the war. I don't remember which war. And it was in Australia, and it was very, very rough going. And he came, and his return home was to see his wife on the ground, just lying flat on her face over the graves of her 3 dead children who died of the Asian flu.
Oh my goodness.
And, you know, I never forgot, you know, that was a word picture in my mind. And I thought, you know, the man goes away to war, the woman's there and she's coping and she's waiting for the telegram. Has he lived or has he died? And in the meantime, 3 kids die. I mean, the history of women and their suffering is phenomenal.
Yeah, well, now you've started to share the one story. I wondered if we might hear another one as well. One of the things that strikes me as I've read the book is that, yeah, like I said, these women seem very ordinary. They seem very real. I wonder if you could tell us a story about a woman who has surprised you because of just her ordinariness, and yet she's done something amazing.
Well, I was going to tell you one, but it's a bit long. But seeing we're maybe talking to a Salvation Army audience, I became aware a number of years ago there was an item on the news about a couple called Lance and Faye Rive. They were a Salvation Army couple working in Nigeria.
Yep.
Their vehicle overturned in a flash flood. Faye was badly injured. She spent months in hospital with a very badly injured neck. But Lance was rendered a tetraplegic, and he was dependent on Faye and others for the rest of his life. He did amazing things. He was part of the Salvation Army's tracking down lost people ministry, did it from his home in Mount Eden. And I went round there to visit him, and his daughter and son-in-law were there, Susan and Kristen Jack. Susan was a doctor.
Okay.
And she'd trained at med school, and she'd married Kristen, who was a nurse. And, it occurred to me meeting them, I thought, I bet you guys probably think that your family's paid its debt to God, if there is such a thing. You've done your bit. And I raised this with them. I said, no, we're going back to Cambodia. We've been there for a while. And I said, what are you going to do? And they said, we're going to live in a treehouse.
As you do.
As you do. They were going to live in one of the poorest slums in Phnom Penh, and they worked for an organisation called Servants to Asia's Poor.
Okay.
And to go and see them and their little boy Caleb living in this little shack, with disease and AIDS and rescuing prostitutes and stuff all around them, and I just marvelled. They set up a thing called Little Conquerors, which was giving disabled kids a chance to walk. And I sat with Susan Jack in a hut, and she was cradling a little boy who was about 7, and he was obviously dreadfully mentally unwell, and she was crying. And I said, what for? She says, I could have saved him with medicine I could have bought in New Zealand for $5. And then on so many occasions during that trip there, I just shed tears sitting with Susan, seeing the heart of this highly professional woman. And more than once I asked her, and Kristen, what are you bringing your little boy into this hellhole of a place? She ended up being medical officer of health in Dunedin. He came back and did youth work, and he started writing a book, a marvellous medieval novel about Calvinism and stuff, and he just finished it before he passed away last year. And Susan Jack is like my heroine.
I'm so glad you shared that story, and I know a lot of our Salvation Army people will indeed know those names.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Can you tell us, what are your hopes for the book? What do you hope is going to, who's it going to reach? How's it going to help?
Look, I don't know. I mean, my counsellor, interestingly enough, she says, resilience is an overused word. And I said, yeah, maybe. But, I wrote a previous book called A Safe Place to Cry. It was prompted by my sister-in-law, who worked for World Vision for about 35 years, and told me about her experiences in the field and how she found it hard to cry even amongst thousands of bodies in Rwanda. But later, in a safe place, she was able to cry. And I went and I interviewed about a dozen professionals, doctors, lawyers, judges, funeral directors, a war crimes prosecutor, and said, how do you do it? How do you deal with the trauma that you have to face in your life? And this is probably where my writing's going, and it's certainly my hope for this book, that people read it and take courage. In the foreword to one of the forewords to the book, Helen Clark agreed to write the major foreword and endorsement, and my good friend Naomi Cowan wrote the other one. And she quoted Malala Yousafzai, who was shot in the head by the Taliban and recovered, and went on to become a world changer. And she said, there are 3 things that will change the world. I forget what they were, the power of the pen, something else, and women.
Okay.
And
cool.
On my bookshelf are so many books. Women Hold Up Half the Sky.
Yes.
A favourite of mine. And I am just in awe of women, and I want men and women to read this book and be moved and changed.
Yeah, cool. And I'm sure they're going to be. And actually, one of the suggestions I was going to make for those watching is that this could be a great thing for Mother's Day. But I want to be clear to say this is not just a book to get for Mother's Day. Buy it for Father's Day, buy it for everybody. Because I think people will find it encouraging and I think they'll find it relatable. And if you're a Kiwi reading it, there's a good chance you're probably going to know someone who's in the book or a place or something like that. I know it was like that for me.
I mean, we are a small country and I've received so many emails and messages from people who've read the book saying, yep, I went to school with that woman,
Yep,
or
exactly.
I'm related to them, or I know them and I just love them to death. And then, can I please have 10 copies? I want to give one to my mum and all my sisters and my aunties.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if people do want to get hold of the book, we'll put the website along the bottom of the screen. But in the meantime, we've got this one that we're going to give away, and if you would like to go in the draw to win this book, then what we'd like you to do is make a comment in the comments below and tell us a woman of courage. It could be someone that you know personally, it could be someone from the Bible or someone from history, but just put that person's name and we'll do the draw, we'll let you know who wins that. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you for having us in your home. Thank you for talking to me and thank you for so honestly sharing your story, as well as just letting people around the world know everybody's story. The story is such a powerful thing. I want to remind people out there that we can be encouraged to share our story because we've all got a story. We might not all have a spectacular story. We might feel very, very ordinary, as I think so many of the people are that you write about. We may feel ordinary and like we can't do much, but we've got a story. We can share that story, we can persevere, and in the end we can all make a difference, albeit in a small way. Thanks for watching. Ka kite.